All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday, mini Friday, because of course tomorrow we have a day off, right? There's no school tomorrow. Um, Anyone know why?
It's Remembrance Day.
Oh, good. Thought somebody was going to say, does it matter? It's just a day off. Yeah, it's Remembrance Day, right? And what is that?
Like remembrance of people who fought in the war.
Yeah.
To honor the soldiers that fought during World War One and Two.
Yep. And all other wars too, but mostly it was World War One and Two, even though most people don't remember that at this point. It was a long time ago. In Russia, Peter, it's May 9th, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not like Remembrance Day. It's like
It's like a crazy day, where everything, there are tanks everywhere.
Yeah.
Like everything is flying and
it's like Military Day or
yeah,
whatever. What's it actually called? It's
day
just-
of Victory Day.
Oh, it's Victory Day. Okay. Yeah, I guess many countries have such a thing, right, or some kind of day, and so tomorrow's ours. But ours isn't like that. There won't be tanks and everything rolling around. It'll be kind of a quieter day, right? Because we remember people who have fought in war. Does anyone have relatives who fought in a war? Yeah. Which one?
My grandparents, mostly, like my two grandfathers, and I mean no grandfather.
Okay.
Like
great grandfather?
wait, no grandfather is like my father's like my father's father.
Yep.
But then like what they call after that.
One more back.
His father.
Okay. Yeah, great grandfather.
Yeah, great grandfather. So yeah, like two of them fought in war,
Mhm.
and then one was, as far as I remember, was like commander of tank division,
Yeah.
and his tank was shot. So, but they had like this thing, they couldn't, like if they escaped from the tank, they would be labeled as like traitors of motherland.
Right.
And yeah, so they had to stay in the tank and die there.
Oh man. It's a rough story. That was during World War II?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Any war veterans? No?
Not that I know.
No? No? Me neither, actually. My grandparents they weren't kind of at the right age because in World War One, my grandparents were 3 or 4 years old, and in World War II, they were already like in their mid-20s, so they were kind of, a little too old to go, kind of thing, and so they just didn't wind up going. So I don't really have any veterans in my family. Okay, so here's what we'll do today. I'd like to try to work with that article that we read yesterday by Pamela Palmater. I'd like to try to finish that off, and then I'll talk a little bit about the project and the sources, because I created some assignments in Microsoft Teams, so I'd like you to just lead you through those and then give you some time to work on them.
I saw it last night and I was like, oh no.
Did you panic?
Yeah.
Don't panic, Eunice. It's fine. It's gonna be fine. Okay, so let's pull out that article from yesterday. I don't have a slide on it, so I'm just gonna put it up on the screen here for us. Let's see. Where is it? There it is. There it is. There. Okay. So this is the article that we read, of course. Do you need a few minutes just to kind of refresh your memory, or are you ready to go, or how are we with this?
Maybe a few minutes.
Just a few minutes? Okay. I'll put 4 minutes on the clock here. These are the questions that we're going to respond to. So let me just see. 4 minutes on the clock. There. Okay. So let's just review that article really quickly. We'll do a quick skim of it, and then we'll discuss, okay? Oh, classic song. That's what you do when you sing passionately. You've got to like have the fist, right? You gotta like,
I don't see.
You don't sing? Not even by yourself? When nobody else is home
Well, yeah, that one I do.
and your jam comes on?
Yeah, I do that.
There you go. Everybody sings. Maybe not well, but what's going on here? In like the early 1990s, if you like broke up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, like this is the song you were gonna listen to. Like, kind
What's
of,
the title?
this is Nothing Compares to You. Classic, like heartbreak, you know. Who's singing it? An Irish singer named Sinead O'Connor.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah. Classic song. Written by Prince, if you know who Prince is. Yep. I don't know if he
1990, he put that, no?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if he recorded it or not, but she made it famous. So if he recorded it, his version didn't really.
There's the version, Prince version.
Okay. Yeah, his version didn't really. Nobody really took any notice of it, but this one was huge.
My mom probably knows this song.
She probably does.
She was in college.
Yep, and if she broke up with her boyfriend, she probably would have listened to this song and cried a little bit about it. As many people probably have. It's a really well written song. It's beautiful. Sad, but beautiful. It's always funny how you say 1990 like it is like ancient history, but it feels more recent to me, obviously. But it was a long time ago.
Were you in high school then?
I was in 1990. I was just starting grade 9.
Oh.
Yeah, I was just starting grade 9 in 1990. Okay, can we talk about this a little bit?
Yep.
Just a little. Okay. So the author of this article is making an argument to us, right? They're trying to convince us of something. They're trying to make a point, and they would like us to believe it. So Pamela here, she says a lot of things in this article, of course. Some of them are kind of shocking and difficult to hear about. But what is the main thing she's trying to convince us of? What's the primary thing she's trying to say here? She has a main point. But what is it? Take a guess. If you're wrong, it just means you're wrong. That's all right. What's that?
I guess.
Yeah. What do you think it might be?
So about the genocide?
What's that?
About the genocide in Canada.
Okay, about the genocide in Canada, 100%. What about the genocide in Canada? What is
She's
she?
trying to prove that there is a genocide occurred.
Exactly, right? She's trying to convince us that that a genocide occurred here, right? We should see what's happened to Indigenous people over the past 200 or 300 years in Canada. We should see that as a genocide, right? That's what she's trying to say, right? So yeah, it sounds simple, but that's the point, right? She's trying to make. And so again, as good critical thinkers, we should always ask ourselves, well, okay, Pamela, why should we believe what you say? Why should we see what's happened here? Why should we see this as a genocide? And so what kind of supporting premises does she give us? How do we know this is a genocide and not something else? Or let me rephrase the question a little bit, if it will help. How do we know a genocide from? How can we tell the difference between a genocide and a war, right? Or a civil war, or just, bullying or mistreatment? What makes something a genocide?
Like genocide is a war crime.
It is a war
Because,
crime.
War is usually when two sides are fighting and they're both
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But then like genocide includes in it like killing of civilians, of children, of women, of all people.
Yeah.
So
Right. So a war is generally between two kind of consensual parties, although sometimes if you get invaded, you just have to defend yourself. But this is, the targeting of women and children, a group of people, and what do those people have in common when they're targeted?
they cannot fight for themselves
Can't fight for themselves, right? And why are they being targeted in the first place?
because they're like most important. Like they're the object of like when there is a war,
Yeah.
this is people who are defended mostly.
Uh,
They're,
yeah, right. So they're very vulnerable, right? Sometimes, but of course we should keep in mind that sometimes genocides happen during a war, right? So the Holocaust is the kind of textbook example of that. But sometimes you have genocides that don't happen during wartime, right? They're separate events, right? And so if you look at the genocide in Rwanda in 1994, there was no war going on really. The genocide kind of happened on its own. So yeah, a genocide is kind of targeting one group of people, and why are those people targeted? Because they're what? They're different opinions.
Maybe they have different opinions.
Well, yeah, maybe. Let's let me take a step back here and recall this from yesterday. I'm sorry I don't have the proper slide on the screen here, but yeah, recall this from yesterday, right? We know what a genocide is because the United Nations defined it, right? They said this is what a genocide is, right? When you basically try to destroy a particular group of people based on their religion, their ethnicity, their race, their nationality. If you try to destroy a specific group of people for one of those reasons, then you are committing a genocide, right? So let's circle back to Pamela here. How does she try to prove to us that a genocide has happened here in Canada?
They attempted to get rid of the Indian.
Okay. How did they do that? How did they try to make these indigenous people go away?
They took the children
Oh, okay.
and taught them like English and stuff, and they tried to take the culture away, like from they tried to make the indigenous children forget about their original.
Right. So they did at least one of these things, right? They removed children from the group, right, and had them raised by white families, right? We didn't talk about this earlier. This was kind of done under the kind of in the service of like protecting children, right? So if they were in a home where there was drug or alcohol abuse, then child services would come, take the children, and put them into a foster home that was hopefully safer, right? But often they looked for non-indigenous families to place these children with, not indigenous families. Okay, so yeah, so okay, so this is what a genocide is, and Canada has done one of those things. Has Canada done other things on that list, according to Pamela?
Single out the group.
What's that?
Single out the group.
They singled them out
Yeah, the group.
for
Death.
for death?
Yeah.
How so? think you're right. I'm just going to remind myself there. Let me look at her. Yeah. Well, yeah, so the first part here is systematic killing of members of a group, right? And so Pamela says here on page 3 that yes, Canada has killed Indigenous people, right? They paid bounties for Micmac men, women, and children. So they basically paid people to kill Indigenous people at one point. They provided blankets covered with smallpox viruses, which of course spread in the community and killed people. It says here they deliberately infected Indigenous children with infectious disease, right? Those things are attempts to kill members of the group, right? What about systematic harm, right? In number 2, in point 2 there, Pamela says, yeah, if you look at in Indian residential schools, there's all kinds of serious harm that comes to Indigenous kids, right? There's rape and sodomy and torture and confinement. Thousands of children were removed from their families. Some Indigenous women were in fact sterilized, so it was made so they couldn't have children, right? That's systematic harm. That's preventing births, right? And she goes on, right? There's more imposing measures to prevent births. So she's saying, so the point of this argument here was, yes, this should be considered a genocide, right? And if we ask the question, why should we believe that, Pamela? Why should we believe that this is a genocide? Pamela is saying, well, that's what a genocide is, right? According to the United Nations. And Canada has done all of those things, right? The Canadian government has checked off all of those boxes, right? So she's saying here, why should we consider this a genocide? Because that's what a genocide is, and Canada has done all of those things, right? Therefore, that's what you have here, right? You have a genocide that's happened. Whether you want to admit it or whether you'd like to admit it, it doesn't matter. That's what it is, and the Canadian government has done that, right? That's her argument, and it's a reasonably simple one, but of course she provides us with lots of evidence, right, and lots of added detail. Do you see how an argument like that works? Right? She's trying to say that, again, this is what's happened, and based on the definition, we have done all of those things, right? And so, therefore, you must have a genocide on your hands, right? Let me go back to this. Nope, that's not right. Nope, that's not right either. So, we have an argument here in front of us where Pamela is saying genocide has occurred here in Canada. This is my proof, right? And so, why might people want to not believe this argument? This is just like the coffee argument, right? I made the argument, we agreed that I had a valid argument, but then I said, but why might people not agree with me anyway, right? And I believe you had reasons to do with health, people didn't want to get addicted, people had maybe religious, they were forbidden by their religion, maybe they just didn't like the taste, right? So, same kind of exercise here. Why might people not want to believe Pamela Palmater's argument here? Or, let me just take a step back. Is this a valid argument? It's a pretty simple one, but Pamela says that this is, well, let me go back here. Pamela says that this is the definition of genocide, right? And Canada has done all those things. So is it true that that is the definition of genocide? Is that true? You'd have to go and check the United Nations website, but you can trust me on this, right? Can you trust me? Okay. So it's true, that is the definition of genocide. Is it true that Canada has done all of the things that Pamela Palmater lists in her article? Now, we don't have time to do the research on that. It is true, right? Not every Indigenous person in Canada has been subjected to everything on that list, but all of those things have happened, okay? In the past, and some of them into the more recent present, okay? So that's true as well. Is that logical support for the conclusion, right? If you want to prove that something's a genocide, do you need to know what a genocide is? Yeah. For something to be a genocide, does it have to fulfill those criteria? Yeah, that's what the United Nations says, right? So here we have an argument that is valid, right? The premises are true, and they are logical support for the conclusion. But, again, just like the coffee argument way back when, some people may want to disagree with it. They may want to disagree with Pamela's argument. And so, I'm just going to put it up on the screen here. So why might people want to disagree? Or why might people disagree?
The one here says they misunderstand genocide.
Okay, so they might not.
People might not think that it's a genocide because they think that genocide would only occur according to millions of people along a specific group
Yeah.
and are within a short space of time. So they might think that what the indigenous people the treatment is a genocide.
Right, and Pamela kind of mentions that at the beginning of the article, right? She says that some people, you know, when they think of genocide, they think of something that happens to millions of people, right? And it happens in a short period of time, and everybody gets killed, you know, in a really short period of time, right? And you know, that does fit, you know, the Holocaust kind of fits into that category. The Rwandan genocide fits into that category. A lot of people are murdered or executed in a reasonably short period of time, right? And so we're kind of used to thinking about genocide that way, and so if we continue to think about it that way, people might look at what's happened in Canada and say, no, that doesn't count, right? Because that's not what we've had here in Canada, right? We haven't had millions of people killed in a short period of time. That's just not what happened here, right? So yeah, that's true, right? People might think that about genocide and then want to disagree with Pamela, right? Why else might people not want to believe this argument? Why else might people not want to believe this argument? So okay, so they haven't physically seen any of this stuff, so they might doubt it. Maybe, but I mean, people do believe things that they've never seen all the time, right? I've never seen two atoms bonding into an ionic compound, but I know that it happens. I believe that it happens, even though I've never seen it. But you're right that a lot of people have never actually seen this happening, right? And maybe if I can extend what you said a little further, Dunya, a lot of people don't know anything about this stuff, right? Yeah, and so it's really a lot of this stuff has not been talked about, right? It's what? Yeah, it is history for the most part. It's uncomfortable history, and for a long time it was history that wasn't really taught in Canada, right? Again, when I was, in high school taking social studies, we never learned about any of this stuff, right? This was, we didn't know, yeah, we didn't know anything about it. It was not talked about, it was not taught, it was not in the textbook. It was just, people just passed over it, right? So yeah, there's a lot of people out there who don't really know anything about what's happened here, right? So yeah, if you don't have enough background, although Pamela's trying to provide a little bit, but if you don't really know, then yeah, you might disagree, right? And maybe you haven't seen any evidence of genocide, and especially if you believe the earlier, if you believe that genocide is just millions of people dying in a short period, then yeah, you might be tempted to say, no, this is not a genocide. Right? Why else might people disagree? Why else might people disagree? Or just not want to believe her?
There's experts and people that say that the genocide is the result of the, not the intention.
Oh, yeah. What does she say about intention?
Many experts argue that the proof of genocide is in the result, not the intention. And with regards to proof, the genocide of indigenous people in North America is
Right. So there's the idea of intention versus result, right? So if genocide is an attempt to, make an entire group of people just disappear and go away, did the Canadian government succeed in that? Are Indigenous people totally gone? No, they're not, right? So in that way, they failed, right? Their genocide is failed because the people survived. They're still around. The other part of it is intent, right? Did the government intend to commit a genocide? Did they intend to destroy these people and somehow make them disappear? What do you think?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Was it the Canadian government's intention? Did they intend? Did they try to make these people disappear? Did they try to destroy them?
Based on recently discovered that the public children that is under the school,
Yeah.
residential school, and we might say yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. What else? What else do you think, guys? Did they intend to do it?
I think it's on purpose to get rid of the
I'll bring you back to this. This is not proof in itself, but I don't know. Look, what does that sound like? Our object is to continue until there is not a single Indian in Canada that has not been absorbed into the body politic. Right? And look at what Pamela quotes this same guy. This guy has said a lot of things that have been pretty ugly. But Pamela here quotes him too. And she says, where is his quote? Duncan Campbell Scott. here. There it is. He says, Indian children die at a much higher rate in residential schools than in their villages. But this alone does not justify a change in the policy of this department, which is geared towards a final solution of our Indian problem. Yikes. Right? First of all, that final solution thing is very frightening, because who else in history used the term final solution? Anybody know their history? Their World War II history? Yeah. That was Hitler, right? And it was the solution to the Jewish question, right? To the Jewish question, what's the final solution? Well, we know what the Nazis' final solution was to that question, right? So here, that's not what happened in Canada, but it's kind of chilling to hear him say that same thing. And again, this was before World War II, right? So look at the date. This is from 1918. Hitler was in 1939 or so when he started doing all of his awful things against, well, it was earlier than that, but the 1930s for Nazi Germany. So, Duncan Campbell Scott is not quoting Hitler here, but it's, as I say, it's chilling to hear the same words, come out of the mouth of this guy. Right? So, again, did they intend to commit a genocide? I don't know, right? Intent is difficult to prove, right? It's like hate crimes. That's often why they don't get charged as hate crimes, because someone's intent is difficult to prove. It's easier to prove what they did rather than what they were trying to do, right? So here, it's difficult to know whether the government was intending to commit a genocide. They didn't succeed in committing a genocide. They committed a lot of harm against a particular people, basically because they were indigenous. Yeah, some people have termed it cultural genocide, because some people have said it's really what it was an attempt to do is destroy that culture. Not so much kill, they weren't so much interested in killing the people, but they were trying to destroy their culture and assimilate them into Canada, right? I'm not sure that one is really so much better than the other. Even if you don't kill someone, you can do some pretty horrible things to them. Pamela here doesn't really make a distinction, right? She says genocide is genocide, and that's what this is. Some people, want to soften it a little bit and say, oh no, it's cultural genocide. Again, I don't know if that's softer or not. Yeah, but that's something some people might say, right? Some people might disagree, right? They might say, no, this isn't a genocide. They might not know anything about it, but they also might feel like, oh no, it's more of a cultural genocide than a full genocide. And again, I'm not sure which is worse, right? It's like asking, what color baseball bat do you want to be hit in the head with? Doesn't really matter that much, right? But still, some people might disagree. The other thing maybe I'll throw in here before I ask you another question is the idea of privilege, right? So there are people in this country, like me, who are white and non-Indigenous. One of the aspects of privilege is that there are things that you can ignore, right? So if you live in a country where you're the dominant group and there is racism in that country, which there is here, being in the dominant group, you can kind of ignore it if you want to, right? Because again, it's not directed at you, right? If you're a person of color, it may be much harder to ignore racism because it's happening to you, right? It's difficult to ignore things that are happening to you. But when they're not happening to you, they're much easier to ignore, right? And that's part of privilege. And I'm not saying you should ignore them, but you are able to if you so choose, right? And so there's a privilege aspect as well, right? Some people may not believe this argument just because they don't want to, right? And they don't want to deal with it, right? Because they feel like it doesn't really affect them. It does, but they feel like it doesn't really affect them. They don't want to deal with this. This is all ancient history. Can't we just get over this already? I don't want to hear about it anymore. Blah, 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 right? So there can be that kind of argument too. People just don't care enough about it, right? Like Dunya says, they don't know, right? They don't know the history. Like Eunice says, they might have a picture in their head of what genocide looks like, and maybe they just, they're like, oh, I just don't want to deal with this, right? And again, as a member of the dominant group, you can kind of do that, right? You can say, ugh, I don't want to deal with this racism stuff. I don't want to deal with this indigenous stuff. I'm busy, right? And again, as a member of the dominant group, that's privilege, right? Indigenous people, it's kind of a lot harder to ignore, right? It's a lot harder to ignore when you do experience racism and discrimination, right? It's harder to ignore when government policies don't treat you the same as other Canadians. It's harder to ignore when you know that your parents and your grandparents both went to residential school and horrible things happened to them there, right? That's not so easy to ignore, right? But again, if you're a non-Indigenous Canadian, it's much easier just to say, ugh, I don't want to deal with all this stuff. It's too much, right? And just sort of push it aside. And again, as a member of the dominant group, you get to do that, right? As a member of Indigenous Canada, it's a lot tougher, right? Because it happened to your family, right? It happened to your people. Let me see here. So, one more question and then I'll give us a break here. What are the consequences of not believing this argument? So we have people out there who, for whatever reason, just don't buy what Pamela is saying here, right? They reject it because they don't know enough, because they don't think it's a real genocide, because they're too busy with their own lives and they're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. What happens if people reject an argument like this? They feel like it's true? Yes, okay. Also, masks need to be worn in here, I'm afraid. Thank you. Let me see. Okay. All right. What are some other consequences of not believing this argument? What happens if we don't believe this? What happens if we just say, you know what, this is too much to deal with, F it, I don't want to look at it? What happens? Say again?
Like this argument has less support.
Okay. Sure, okay, yeah, it's got less support, and therefore, what's the effect of that? Yeah, so new generations will forget about it, and also, like, we do have an issue here in Canada, right? This is a real issue that, Indigenous people are not treated equally by society, by government, right? They are, they struggle in a number of ways, and I'll try to show you that, I'll try to show you that. They still struggle in a number of ways. They're not treated equally. And, if we're interested in social justice, if we're interested in making sure that everyone is treated equitably, that's something we need to repair, right? We need to fix that. And if we cannot admit to the past, right? If we can't sort of, if we can't accept an argument like this, does anything really get fixed? No, right? You can't fix a problem if you can't admit that it exists, right? If you refuse to see the leak in your roof, if you're like, I'm just not going to look at it, you will never fix the leak, right? You will never fix something that you refuse to look at. Right? And so, again, if we reject an argument like this, especially if we're saying, oh, I don't want to deal with this, it's too much, it's heavy, it's not my fault, I don't want to deal with it, right? Then nothing happens, right? Then everything stays the same, right? Or gets worse. So conversely, if we do accept an argument like this, or if we do accept the truth of what's happened here in Canada, well, what's the consequence of that? If we don't believe it and nothing happens, we do believe it. It's what? Yeah, like maybe we can actually, maybe we can actually fix it, right? Maybe we can actually take steps to fix that inequality between people, right? And I think that's Pamela's main point in writing this article, right, is that she wants things to change. She's an Indigenous person herself. I don't think I mentioned that before, but if you Google her, you'll see that she's an Indigenous person herself. And so, yeah, she wants things to change, right? But you can't change things. You can't sort of fix what's happened in the past if you don't actually admit to what's happened in the past, right? If you just simply assume that, oh well, Indigenous people are having a rough time, I'm sure they'll find their way, right? That's not enough, right? Like there has been a serious problem here, and there continues to be one, right? And again, we need to be able to look at it, head on with both eyes to be able to fix what's gone wrong here, right? And so that's Pamela's point, right? And again, that genocide word is very heavy, right? You don't accuse people of genocide lightly, right? It's a heavy word, right? And so people might even want to reject it just because of that, right? Because it sounds like something that's too awful for Canada, right? And Pamela mentions that too, right? She says a lot of people think that, genocide is something that happens over there, right? Wherever over there is. But somewhere else, right? Genocide is something that happens somewhere else, not here. And Pamela is saying, well, unfortunately, that's what's happened, right? It has happened here. And again, like Peter mentioned, some people like to, call it cultural genocide, or, I don't know. I'm not sure I strongly favor one or the other, because as I say, I think they're both pretty awful. But yeah, if we can't kind of admit to what's happened, how can you go forward, right? It's the same thing. It's like an apology, right? If you do something horrible to your friend, maybe not horrible, but if you do something bad to your friend, can you properly apologize to them without admitting to what's happened?
No.
Not really, right? If you do something bad to someone and you want to say sorry and you want to fix the relationship, you do have to admit that you did a wrong thing, right? It's like those people who apologize, I don't know what I did, but I'm sorry. It's like, no, like that's not good enough, right? You have to know what you did wrong. You have to admit to, I did this and that was wrong and I am sorry, right? You have to understand the past and validate it. If you don't do that, the apology is pretty weak, right? I don't know what I did. I don't know why you're so upset, but I'm so sorry. Can we just get by this? No, right? That's not a good apology. That's an awful apology, right? You have to admit to what's gone wrong. You have to understand what you did, and then you apologize and start to fix it. Right? And so it's the same thing here. If we can't acknowledge what's gone wrong, what good is any of it, right? What good is flying the flags at half-mast? What good is, wearing orange shirts, right? If you can't admit to what happened, all that other stuff is meaningless, right? They're just shirts that are orange. Big deal, right? Yeah. And it's the same thing with, this year we had a day of truth and reconciliation, right? Was it September? Time flies. Was it September 30th we had our day off? I think it was. Yeah. And so that was a day to think about what's happened to Indigenous people in Canada and how to move forward. That's what the day was for. But again, man, can somebody just steal that car already? Please? We won't tell, just steal the car. That's what that day was for, right? And again, if we don't admit the past, if we don't understand what went wrong, then it's just a day off, right? It has no meaning. And so, okay. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I'll talk about the sources assignment. And yes, we'll do that. Okay? So take a quick break. Okay, and we are back. So, second half of class, what I wanted to do is provide you with a little guidance for presentation, but more specifically for the first part of the final project, which is looking for sources. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about finding credible sources and a little bit about plagiarism and stuff like that, okay? So, let's jump in. So, as I told you yesterday, and I posted the sheet that we went over with the assignment, I posted it in Microsoft Teams. It's in the assignment part 2 presentation. That PDF is in there, so if you want to look at it again, that's where you'll find it. As I described to you yesterday, you will research a particular topic, you will compile that information, you'll organize it, you'll present it to us in front of the class, and we will all be educated by your wise words. Okay. Now, yeah, what I'm looking for you to do here is to be able to find information on your own, to be able to understand it, to be able to combine it into something that makes sense, to think critically, and to show me that you've learned something in social justice here, okay? That's kind of what I'm looking for. Now, when you're looking for material, when you're looking for information out there, we need sources, but we need them to be credible, right? We need them to be believable. Because as time goes on, it seems like more and more information out there is garbage, right? There are people who are misinformed, there are people who are misled, there's people who think they know what they're talking about, but they don't, and then there's people out there who will just outright lie, right? Even though it is clearly, we can clearly see the truth of the matter, they will lie right to your face and will continue to do it, right?
Like
So,
the vaccine?
like the vaccine, like Donald Trump, like a whole collection of people will simply lie because why not, right? So again, even more so than 5 years ago, more so than 10 years ago, more so than 20 years ago, we have to be able to evaluate information to make sure that we can believe the person who is talking to us or the things that we're reading. Because again, things that are, in video, especially when they're well-made video, things that are in print, they look believable, right? But we have to be more careful, unfortunately, because again, there's a lot of misinformation and lies out there, and we have to be able to sort through them, okay? So, for you, looking for material for your presentations, there's kind of you have two broad options, right? The first one is to go to the college library, okay? And you don't have to go to the physical library, you can go to the online library. So if you go to the website, I think the website looks like this right now. If you go to the website and click library, it'll take you into a page like this. You can go to find materials. You might have to log in at some point here. I forget where the login screen comes up. And you can go to databases right here, okay? And so the database screen comes up, and there's all kinds of different ones. And I would recommend, I think I've got a little screen. Yeah, I'd recommend MAS Ultra to you. It's got lots of magazine articles, newspaper articles. I would say that you want to steer away from like the heavy academic journal articles because they tend to be pretty long and pretty complex. So I wouldn't go there. I would stay with newspapers and magazines for most of what you're looking for. If you head into the academic stuff, it tends to be it's too much, right? It's just too much for this level. So again, if in these databases here, MAS Ultra is a pretty good one. You can look at a few of the others if you like, but some of them are a little more like university academic, and that might be just a bit much for us, but you can look at whatever you want. Basically, everything that you'll find in the library is credible, right? So we'll talk about credibility in a second, but it's all good quality material. And so you can relax. Pretty much everything you'll find here is good stuff. Okay? And again, if you go into these databases, there'll be kind of a search thing here. And so you can search for multiple terms, right? So you can search for social justice and race, or you can search for racism and women, or you can search for, you know, lesbians and, I don't know, the military. Sorry, just trying to think of something. But you can key in different terms and it will spit out different articles for you, okay? And again, for me, I try to just check off these boxes on the side. So this is after you do a search, right? You put a few terms in there, you hit search, a bunch of stuff will come up, and then I usually check off some things on the side there. So magazines and newspapers, I will check off. I don't want any book reviews, right? I read this book and this is what I think. Don't care. Not right now, anyway. Book reviews, I don't check off. Biographies, probably not interested in that unless you're trying to figure out something about a particular person, but primary source documents, probably not either for this one. So magazines and newspapers are probably what I want. It'll filter out a bunch of other stuff, which is good because sometimes you'll get a lot of search results, and if it's stuff that you're not even going to look at, you want to sift that stuff out early, right? So you can use the college library, you can search through there. All of the stuff that you find will be credible and useful, okay? I think probably the way that most people want to do their searching, though, is on the internet, right? So we're much more familiar with Google searches than we are library searches, and so lots of people go to the internet. Now, if you do that, you'll probably find lots of stuff as well, and lots of different stuff from the college library site. But you've got to be a little more careful with your selections, okay? Because, again, the internet is kind of free range, right? So you can find very good quality information or the craziest stuff you've ever heard, right? So you have to be able to distinguish, right? And so to kind of determine if you have a good source or not, I'm going to suggest we use the CRAP test. Okay? There's the CRAP test. There's two A's in CRAP, but it's still CRAP. Okay? And CRAP here is an acronym, stands for currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose. Okay? So some of you might kind of do some of these things already. If you're reading something and you're deciding whether or not you should believe it or not, you probably do some of this stuff, in an unconscious way, but I just want to make sure that we're doing it in a conscious way, okay? So let's look one at a time here. So currency, look at how old this thing is, okay? How old is this article that you're looking at, right? If you're looking for something about social justice, right, you may want to look at something that is very recent, right? Because social justice stuff is kind of new on people's radar. You don't want something from 1962, right? People weren't talking about race and sexuality and gender in quite the same way in 1962 as they do today, right? So for social justice stuff, you want things that are fairly new, right? Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Again, if you were looking for, if you were doing something on Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights March, something older might be okay, right? Because that happened in the 1960s, so, an older source might be okay there. But a lot of social justice issues are kind of new, and you'll want articles that are, probably in the last few years. Right? Relevancy. Again, you'll probably figure this out without thinking too much, but does it fit your project? Right? Is it useful to the story you're trying to tell, or the topic of your presentation, right? So I think obviously you wouldn't look for stuff that doesn't fit, right? You're looking for stuff that does fit into your presentation, but it's good to ask yourself that. Third one is authority. Okay, so this is a big one. Who actually wrote this thing? Or if it's a video, who created this video, right? What do we know who they are? Do we have an author name? If we do, who are they, right? Are they a professor of sociology at Harvard University? Or are they some guy who lives in his mom's basement and wears a tinfoil hat, right? Those are the big difference, right? And so we need to be able to try to figure out who these people are, right? Sorry. Not that there's anything wrong with living in your mom's basement, but so yeah, who is this person, right? Are they someone who can be trusted? Do they know anything about what they're talking about, right? So again, if we have an author, we need to be able to Google them, right? So for instance, we just read an article in class, right? And it was written by Pamela Palmater, right? Okay, I'm going to Google her. Okay, so tell me if you think she is credible. Okay, if we should believe what she says, or if she's, an authority. So it says here, Pamela Palmater is a Mi'kmaq. That's a group of Indigenous people in Eastern Canada. Okay, so she's an Indigenous person. Pamela Palmater is a Mi'kmaq lawyer, professor, activist, and politician from Mi'kmaqui, New Brunswick, Canada. A frequent media political commentator, she appears for Aboriginal People's television networks in Focus, CTV, and CBC. She went to Dalhousie University. Got a BA. She got her Bachelor of Laws 1997 and Master of Laws in Aboriginal Law in 1999. In 2009, she got a doctorate in Aboriginal Law from Dalhousie University Law School. What do you think? Credible? Does she know what she's talking about?
I think so.
Heck yes, right? Especially when she's talking about Indigenous issues in Canada, right? She's pretty credible, I think, right? We can believe her, right? So again, just a quick Google search can sometimes turn up who this person is, and should we believe them, right? Do they have any, do they have expertise in what they're writing about, okay? Accuracy. So this is a tough one because sometimes you're researching things that you don't know, right? So it's tough to know if they're correct or not. But pay attention to, in this case, if I don't know for sure if the information is correct, I usually pay a lot more attention to how it's written, right? So if I see spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes, that's a huge red flag to me, right? If you can't use spell check, then how do I know that you know anything about anything? And of course, that doesn't count for students. I know you're all learning and you're working hard and your English is not your first language. It doesn't count for you. But when I'm on the internet looking for information, if you make a spelling mistake or a grammar mistake, not good. I am seriously doubting your ability to know what you're talking about, right? So again, not for students, but for people on the internet, I'm very picky about grammar and spelling. And if there's a mistake, not good, right? Definitely not good. And it's not good because, again, it shows that the person hasn't been careful about their writing, and so they might not be careful with the truth either. But also what a lot of journals and newspapers have is that they have editors, right? They have people looking at the writing and saying, is this good quality writing? Is this of such quality that I can publish it, right? And so the editor kind of does some of our job for us, right? So if we go to a magazine, like a bigger magazine or a bigger newspaper, there's always an editor that's trying to look out for us, right? And if somebody hands in a garbage article, then the editor says, this is garbage, right? I'm not publishing this. Take it back, rewrite it, fix it, then I'll look at it again, right? So, yeah, but with no editor, people can just publish whatever they want, right? Some people can even set up a YouTube channel and stream things every day and just say whatever they want.
All those kind of people.
Yeah, you know those kind of people? Ugh, right? People can do that, right? So again, we have to be careful, but any situation where there's an editor or sort of a bigger company over top of that person, that's more helpful, right? Because there'll always be somebody checking facts, checking to make sure that it's quality writing, that it's not just what somebody wrote because they felt like it. Good morning. The last thing is purpose, okay? So this is an interesting one as well, because who is this person writing to? Who is their audience, and why are they writing it, right? We just read that article by Pamela Palmater. Who is her audience? Who is she talking to in her article? Who's it written for? For who? For Canadian people? Okay, it's written for Indigenous people, definitely.
No, I mean like it's about them.
Oh, it's about
But
them.
it's for like new generation maybe, or for our generation.
That's who she's talking to.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she's definitely talking to people of the next generation, right? Who else is she talking to in general?
Just everyone.
Everyone, right? Like
to
all.
get the word out that what happened.
Yeah. Like all Canadians, right? She wants to talk to all Canadians. So, yeah, we know that that's her audience, right? We know what her purpose is, right? She's not trying to sell us anything, is she? No, right? She's not trying to create fear, is she? No. She's trying to explain and educate, right? This is what happened, you guys, and we should see this as a genocide in Canada, right? That's her purpose. And that's good, but again, it's useful for us to know who someone is writing to, or if it's a video, who the video is made for, and what they're trying to do, right? Are they trying to just educate you? Are they trying to convince you that something might have been a genocide? It's okay if they do, right? A little bit of bias is okay. Pamela Palmater is biased in favor of Indigenous people. She is an Indigenous person, right? Bias is okay as long as we can recognize what it is, right? So, yeah, Pamela has an opinion. She's trying to convince you of something. She's trying to educate you as well. She's speaking to all of Canada. Great, right? We know that. She's not trying to sell us anything. She's not trying to create fear. She's not trying to, make Justin Trudeau look bad by saying he's a horrible person, right? Not that he's not, but that's not her purpose, right? So, again, one purpose is neither good or bad. The point is that we have to know why someone has created this source, right? What is the purpose of it? Are they trying to create fear and confusion? Are they trying to pump up a political candidate, right? Are they trying to make somebody look good or look bad? Are they trying to educate? What are they doing, right? And the last thing I'll say about this one is that be wary of articles that try to make you really emotional, right? They try to press your emotional buttons, right? They use words that are, that are designed to sort of create an emotional reaction. They exaggerate things quite a bit. Those are articles that you should steer clear of, right? Because they're clickbait, right? They're trying to get a reaction out of you. They're trying to make you, emotional about something. And, again, we just read Pamela Palmater's article, and there was some pretty heavy stuff in there, right? Like some pretty serious, awful stuff happened to Indigenous people, did it not? Yeah, but she didn't write it in a way that was like meant to make us feel, oh, right? No, it was pretty level, right? You could tell she was being direct, right? And she was saying, this is what I think, this is what we need to see, this is how we should think about it, this is how we need to move forward. She was being very direct, right? And very assertive, but she wasn't trying to like manipulate your emotions kind of thing, right? And again, be wary of that too, because that's, when people are trying to manipulate your emotions, they're trying to manipulate you, right? They're trying to trick you into feeling a certain way or doing a certain thing. And we really want articles like Pamela's who are clear and direct and make a good argument, right? Not that are trying to push our emotional buttons and try to get us to feel one way or the other. Okay? Even if the thing they're writing about, Pamela has feelings about it, I guarantee you, right? And we should have feelings about it as well, right? But she's not trying to manipulate you. She's not trying to manipulate your feelings with her writing. Okay? And that's important. So if something kind of passes all of these things, then we probably have a decent source, right? We have a good source. If we can, if we have something that is fairly new or at least connected to the time period we're working with, if it's relevant to our project, if the person who wrote it has some authority, right? If they know what they're talking about, if the information is true and accurate, or at least if it's well written, and then if we know the purpose, right? If it's for education, or if someone's expressing their opinion, all of that is good, right? If people are trying to sell us something, if people are trying to manipulate us or make us really emotional about something, probably not so good, right? So, in your source, this will be the last thing I'll say. So, in your source assignment, okay, I'm going to ask you to format things in MLA format, and some of us have had some experience with that already. We've kind of tried to do it once already, so that's good. There's a few links to how to do that formatting here, and I think they're in the assignment as well. And let me just pull up the assignment here.
I think people who take Lindsay's class are already like pro at MLA.
Probably, and that's great. That's great. Then it'll be easy.
She made us do the guide once, the MLA like template thing.
Do the guide? What do you mean?
The MLA template. She made us like make one.
Oh, I see. I see.
So every time I do assignment, I use that format.
Good. That's awesome. Okay, so where's Teams? There it is. How come that's not switching?
Is the slides gonna be on screen portal?
Yes. Okay, I don't know why that's not switching. My streaming software is glitching at the moment. So in the source assignment, you'll see two things. So one is a description of what you need to do, okay, and the second one is a crap test form. So for each of your sources, you'll have 6. So you'll have to have 6 forms. I put a blank one in there, but you'll need 6. And all you have to do is put the name of the source and a link to it, and then basically just go down the checklist, doing the kind of things we talked about today. Is it current? Is it relevant? Do you know who the author is? Is the author a credible human being, right? Are they an authority? Do you understand the purpose of this writing? Do you know who they're talking to? So it's quite easy to do, but I just want to see that you've actually evaluated each of those sources and that you've decided that they are good sources. Okay. So I'm sorry I can't put that on the screen. I don't know what's going on, but you will see it in the source assignment. Also, is Wikipedia a good source? Is it a credible source?
Not always.
Not always, right? For academic stuff, for schoolwork, for writing, Wikipedia is no good. I admit I use it all the time. I just did, actually, with Pamela Ballmater. I use it all the time. But for actual academic work, we don't want to use it, right? Because we have no idea who wrote it. That's the whole point of Wikipedia, is that anyone can go in and edit it. We don't know who wrote it, and sometimes we don't really know if it's true or not, right? The idea is that because everyone can get in there, that people will fact check other people and correct errors, and that eventually it will become perfect, right? But we can't say that of every piece of information. So is it useful in everyday life, Wikipedia? 100%. I don't know what I did without it. But when we're doing academic work, no good. We don't know who wrote what. We don't know if it's right or wrong. So steer clear of Wikipedia for academic stuff. In your everyday life, go nuts. Okay? Can we what? Like how to format it?
Google.
How to Google it? Oh. You can use the library website, or you can just Google things. You can do either of those things, and you'll find different things in each one, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure how to do it on library.
What's that?
I'm not sure how to do it on library.
Oh, well, then for now you could just stick with Googling stuff. Google Scholar is also a good place to look, but again, you'll have to watch because you don't want to. Some of the articles are going to be pretty academic and pretty long, and we don't want to deal with those. Okay, so Google Scholar might be good as well, but just be careful. You might find stuff that's just a little too much for us to deal with. Okay.
The topic has to be something about we've learned, right? Or just any social justice.
Any social justice issue. Any social justice issue. Run it by me first. But I do. Yeah, basically what I want to see in your presentation, I want to see evidence that you've learned things from this course. So you don't have to tell me things that we've already done. And in fact, I'd rather you tell me new things. But yeah, I just want to watch you present and say, you know what? Eunice has been here in class. She's learned. I can tell that she can talk about these things the way that we've talked about them. I can just see evidence that she's been here and that she's learned. Okay? Hey, Felicia. Okay, last thing. So Friday is field trip day. I need your forms. I need $6, and I need you to be here at 9:30 on Friday. Okay? So you can sleep in a little bit. But I need you here at 9:30 so we can go downstairs and be on the bus and out and away by 10. Okay?
I transfer to you already.
What's that?
I just need to give you the presenter.
Actually, hang on. Okay. I just need to see you. Actually, I might need to revise that. Just give me 1 second. Sorry. Nope, that's wrong. Time change screwed me up. I need you to be here at 8:30.
Oh.
Need you to be here at 8:30, okay?
No sleeping in then.
No, sorry, I got screwed up because the museum opens at 10, so we're leaving at 9. We're leaving at 9,
Do
not.
they know?
What's that?
Do they know?
Who?
Because the class ends at 9:40, right?
This one?
The other class, the seat.
Yes. Well, I think I asked yesterday and nobody had a class after this, right?
But we're going with the.
Yeah, I'm working that out with Tom.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, come on in. Okay, so now I'm gonna put that in Microsoft Teams and send you an email. Be here at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Okay, so you can sleep in just a little bit, but not much. Okay, just a little. Friday morning. Okay, all right. So go have a nice afternoon. I'll see you Friday morning, 8:30. Okay.
You got my